Hello. This training is called So What, which is all about understanding your communication preferences. Okay, we know that communication is essential, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. When you understand what you need for effective communication, and share that with other people, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So, letting people know how it's best to communicate with you makes life easier for you and for them. It might not solve every single communication issue, but it is going to make a good start and it's going to highlight patterns and ways that you are making communication more difficult for yourself at the moment and ways that you can amend that and update that. Okay, let's have a look then. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to communication is for you to identify whether you prefer synchronous or asynchronous communication. What that means is synchronous communication is in sync, if you like. It's in real time. It's having a face to face conversation or a back and forth on the phone or a live Zoom call, something where you are both operating in the same real time. It's interactive and there's back and forth in the moment in real time. Compared to that, asynchronous is not in real time. So this is like texting somebody and then waiting for their reply. So there's an asynchronicity between the timings. So there's limited back and forth in real time. There's not necessarily limited back and forth, but you might not be expected to give an immediate answer. Okay. I don't even like it when people can see that I'm typing because sometimes I open the window, forget to reply, and it shows I'm typing when I'm actually not. I've just got the window open. And I don't like those expectations. This can also be things like email, where you send somebody an email when you've got time, but you're not expecting an immediate response to your email. You're going to wait until it's a good time for them to respond to your email. Okay, so there's little or no real time interaction. There is full interaction at some point. Okay, so think about whether you prefer synchronous or asynchronous communication to start with. That's the first thing. And whether you like asynchronous or synchronous communication can depend on some factors, okay? It can depend on whether it's work related communication or whether it's social or personal communications. You might want to be really comfortable talking to your friends or your family members in real time, but need a little bit of time to think about work decisions, for example. It can also be different whether you are initiating the communication or responding to it. So I'll give you an example. I'm really happy answering the phone. I'll answer the phone if it rings from pretty much everybody, even if it says no caller ID. However, phoning someone like car insurance companies to talk about a renewal or asking for a specific person from a switchboard, for example, from a hotel asking somebody or phoning a company and asking for their accounts department, I absolutely hate. I'd much rather send an email and have that unpersonal communication. So we are different in our expressive and our receptive. Now, expressive communication is that when you are initiating communication or you're starting or you're in some way expressing yourself. So, how are you communicating outwards with other people? And how much control have you got about how you express yourself? I often feel like we've got more control over our expressive communication than we have over our receptive communication. Receptive communication is how we like others to communicate with us, how we like to receive communication, for example. And this can feel like we have less control unless we take control back of it. So, for example, you might have one of those friends who just picks up the phone and rings you, and they don't even ask how you are when they start the conversation. They just start telling you about their thing. And you might pick up the phone to them because you think it might be urgent, but actually you haven't really got time to get into a conversation about something trivial that they just wanted to offload to you. It's also useful to know with that receptive conversation whether they want you to do anything with it or whether they just want to vent at you. And this is really important because it's really helpful if when you're communicating with somebody you let them know if you want them to respond to you and give you some suggestions, or whether you just want them to listen. And this can be a game changer in conversation. So I know that my friends and I are quite good at doing this now, where one of us will ring up and say, "How are you doing? I've got something to offload to you." And then we'll ask them, "Do you want me to do anything with it, or do you just want to tell me to get it off your chest?" And that's really helpful because it facilitates that expressive communication on their part. And as the person receiving the information, we're not having to think about questions to ask them, or ways to express our empathy. We just want to listen to them. Okay, so expressing yourself and letting other people know how you want to receive the communication really helps make it comfortable for everybody. Now, this diagram looks a lot like the model that we used when we were talking about our state of regulation, but it's also really useful in terms of thinking about the level of intimacy and the level of immediacy that different types of communication have. Okay, up at the top, we've got things that require high immediacy, so things that are happening in real time, very much that synchronous communication, and high level of intimacy. I've put their physical contact. And at the bottom of the grid, where we have low levels of intimacy and low levels of immediacy, this is going to be your asynchronous communication. And I've given us different ways of communicating throughout this grid. Okay, so we begin at the top with high intimacy, high immediacy, physical contact, giving somebody a hug, having a high five, maybe putting your hand on somebody's shoulder, just reassuring them, giving somebody a handshake, and maybe some other non-verbal communications like giving somebody a nod, or like a signal that you're supporting them. Then we've got things that don't require any physical contact, but do require your physical presence. So being in a physical meeting with people in the room, giving a presentation or watching a presentation by somebody else, some kind of social situation like a party or a gathering, and then also networking in person in the room would come in this category. We can also use our vision and voice together for this next level of communication. So kind of moderate intimacy, moderate immediacy. We can think about Zoom calls. So we're not in the room with people. We don't have our physical presence, but they can see our face and they can hear our voice. So FaceTime calls, and also leaving people video notes. So this is where we cross that line from it being real-time synchronous into being asynchronous, but still have a high level of intimacy by using our voice and our face, by leaving video notes. One stage down from that is leaving voice notes. So we're still using our voice. So there's a lower level of immediacy. There's a lower level of immediacy, but there's still that same level of intimacy when we're using our voice. So phone calls for that synchronous communication, and video voice notes for that asynchronous communication. And then we go down to the bottom section, which is a low level of intimacy and a low level of immediacy, where we are thinking about things like text-based messaging, your messenger messages, your WhatsApp messages, just text messages. Email is a great one for here. And then document sharing. So you might let people have access, for example, to work on a Google Doc together or a Google Sheet together. Or you might use a sort of Teams portal or a Teams chat. And also anything that's recorded. So giving people a replay or a recorded version of a training, much like this training. This would be low or no person, no immediate contact. It still feels that there is some intimacy because I'm recording it for you, but there's no immediacy. You can watch it where you want to. Now, once you recognize where you fall on that level of intimacy and immediacy for your preferences, you need to let other people know so that they can communicate with you in ways that are easy for you. And you can also set their expectations about how you're going to communicate with them. So being clear about how you prefer to be communicated with increases that clarity for everyone. But you can also let people know how to expect communication from you. And it doesn't need to be really formal. You don't have to set this out in any kind of document, how you're going to do this. I've just given you some examples of here that you can give to other people. So, for example, you can say, "Oh, can you leave me a voice note to let me know when you're going to arrive on Sunday if somebody's coming to visit you?" So you're very clearly saying, "Leave me a voice note." You're not asking them to call you. You can say, send me an email with the details or attach the document to an email. That would be the best way for me to receive that. Again, letting somebody know. If you're going to initiate an email in a conversation with somebody, you can just say, I'll email you the details when I've got them, or I'll email you the list when I've got everybody's confirmation. So again, you're setting out how you're going to be communicating with them, and then they won't ring to ask how you're getting on. Another one I've put here, if you want to meet somebody in person, just ask them, like, let's meet for coffee to discuss the plans. That's much easier than saying, give me a call and we can discuss the plans, if you want to meet with them in person. So just being clear about how you want to communicate and what time frame that you want to communicate with them in, that's going to be really helpful for clarifying your communication preferences. Right then, your task for this training is to complete the worksheet with your initial thoughts about your communication preferences. And over the coming weeks, I want you to notice and identify any specific people or situations where you'd like to change or update the communication style that you use between you. You may notice that you have a stronger preference with some people or in some situations than others. And just add that to your sheet, make those observations and notes in there. And then consider some ways that you can make other people aware of your communication preferences. So, how are you going to let people know how you like to be communicated with? And I've given you some space on the worksheet for you to fill in with some ways that you could practice doing that with different people so that you can get the best out of your communication with them.